to listen to a very distinguished speaker. While they connect me on to share the slides, let me give you just a brief intro about him. And the best part of the intro is he doesn't want to be introduced. He said, just say Dr. Raj Vedam is here and let me talk about my topic. So that's his humbleness. So he's an electrical engineer with an undergraduate degree from Mysore University, master's from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and then doctoral degree from Oregon State University. That's where he gets the title Dr. Raj Vedam. He has over 3 decades of multidisciplinary work experience in various industries, but he's devoted himself as a hobby and a drive to be able to look into the real history of India. And so without further ado, Dr. Vedam, floor is yours.
Namaskar, namaste, namaskaram, whichever you prefer. And it's a real pleasure to be here at Arya Samaj. My thanks to Dev ji for inviting me, Subhash Gupta ji for inviting me, and several other leaders. So with that, I'll get started. There's a booming sound to this. Can you reduce the volume, perhaps? It's booming a bit. Before I start, Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. My pranams to the teachers, gurus who come ahead of us and whose works I'm benefiting from. So I'm going to be talking about the toxicity of enforced narratives on the Bharatiya civilization, a topic that is dear to all of us because we are all pervasively impacted by a narrative out there, whether it's our children in school or whether we ourselves are victims of a narrative that is thrust on us. So today's talk is going to be focusing on that, and later talks will talk on other aspects. The first question to ask is, who am I? All of you here at Arya Samaj can answer that question very well, because from Vedanta, we have the Mahavakyas that say, Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, and these kind of Mahavakyas that tell us who we are. But this is not how the world sees us. The world sees us in a very, very horrendous way. Tremendous hatred is there, nothing philosophical about it. So I like to answer the question, why are the narratives negative on India to start with? And who are the people who made these kind of negative narratives? And what should our kids, whether in India or here in the United States, what should they understand and how to protect their identity? They need to understand that. Towards that, this little talk. To set the context, I'd like to tell you who are the people who wrote the history of India itself. And we find there are several issues in the narrative of Indian history. If you go there and read these things, through something that I call evidence-based history, we find that we are an ancient civilization, but then they tell us that you're a recent civilization. After Harappa, we don't know anything about them. We don't know their language, we don't know their religion, what they ate, what they spoke, what they wrote, nothing. After they disappeared, somebody called Aryans came and you're all Aryans. That's what they tell us, right? So we are a recent civilization according to them. According to the evidence, scientific evidence, we can find out we are all the same. There is no Aryan, there is no Dravidian, there's no tribal, there is no North Indian, South Indian, all these kind of nonsense. We find that in the narration of history that tell us that we are Aryans, we are Dravidians, we are tribal people, and so on. We can show that knowledge systems developed independently in India, whereas they tell us that you learned everything from Babylon and from Greece. We find that we have humane, enlightened philosophies in our Vedanta and the way we look at life, the way we look at the cosmos, about ourselves, the goal in life and everything. But they tell us we are aggressive, uncivilized, inhumane philosophies with a so-called caste system and all of these kind of things. This is how they see us. And we can show that Indian knowledge systems impacted many other civilizations, but they tell us that other civilizations impacted us. So who are the people who wrote this history? We have been happy with Puranas, Thala Puranas, Itihasas, and our Vamshavalis. This is the concept of history that we have. But then they tell us that the colonial people, when they came to India, they wanted to write a history of India. They tried to show us through the lens of oppressor, oppressed. They wanted to show we are backward, primitive people. They wanted to show that Brahmins are evil. And these kind of narratives came about with what they did. And they started the first distortions. They were followed by Eurocentric people who wanted to answer why is Sanskrit, Latin, and Greek related? And in their Eurocentric notions, they wanted to put some distance between Indians and the Europeans. So they made Central Asia as a place where a Proto-Indo-European ancestral language was there. And from there, the daughter languages of Balto-Slavic, Italic, Hellenic, as well as Iranian, Sanskrit, everything has come from that according to them. They were followed by missionaries. Whenever the colonial people, wherever they went, missionaries are not far behind. And they wanted to convert the Indians to Christianity. So they were at the forefront of translating the Sanskrit literature into European languages, into German, French, English, and so on. So motivated translations were done by people like Griffith, people like H.H. Wilson, and so many others. They did these kind of translations. Then we have, since India got independence, we got the Nehruvian socialist bias over there, and we also have the Marxist bias. Because of these frameworks, they have hijacked the history of India, they have imposed their ideologies on it, and they have subverted your identity and my identity. That is what is happening. In service of their dogmas and ideologies, this is what has happened. 5 frameworks are controlling your history. That's why we're finding it difficult to change the narrative. Very quickly, for example, very toxic colonial missionary Eurocentrism, people like James Mill, who says the Hindu, like the eunuch, excels in qualities of a slave. This man never visited India, but this is the kind of history of India that he wrote, which set the stage for all the colonial people to write history of India. They learned from his book. The 3-month voyage from Britain to India, they spent the time reading these kind of books and learning about India. So this is the kind of mindset. On the other side, Macaulay, who seem to think a single shelf of good European library is worth more than the entire Vedanta literature, whatever of India, Arabia. Highly Eurocentric people came this at the stage. And the socialists and Marxists, they, in addition, their ideologies destroy our identity. It's Atman-crushing kind of philosophy over here, literally. So it all stems from Karl Marx, who believed that all of history is a history of class struggles. He believed that one fine day, the working class will rise and destroy, they'll kill off all the ruling classes, and there'll be a classless utopia, eventually erasing all classes. He believed that change will come on the back of a bloody revolution. That is what he thought. The socialists belong to the same ideology. Whatever communism is, socialists believe in the same thing, but with a key difference. The difference is socialists believe change can come through the constitution. Through the democratic means, you can bring in the laws. They also believe that the old order is corrupted. Old order is Hinduism. So by destroying Hinduism, they believe they can get a classless utopia in India. But then through constitution, they want to destroy Hinduism. This is what we have seen since 1947, the Constitution of India and so on. All laws are designed to demolish Hinduism completely. We see that till the present day, this is what we see because it comes from that. It seeks change and reform through democratic process. So since 1947, unfortunately, we inherited Nehruvian socialism. Nehru was a member of the Fabian Society in Britain of those days who wanted to bring about socialism in Britain. So when he was made the prime minister, he brought in these ideas. Overnight, Indians started bringing in the drishti of the socialism in writing our textbooks, and everything came about with this kind of a thinking. And since 1972, his daughter, Indira Gandhi, for political survival, she made a pact literally with the devil. And in this case, it was a communist. So for political survival, the communists said, we'll support you, but we want the HRD sector. That is the only thing they wanted. They didn't want finance. They didn't want anything because they know by controlling your mind, they've controlled everything. So education is what they wanted. So she appointed Nurul Hassan. He was a minister for culture, education, 72. He created, controlled, appointed the entire ecosystem of the socialist Marxist education. all these bodies that you see here, ICHR or JNU or AMU, Patna University, all these things were set up by these people. And you could not be a vice chancellor or professor over there unless you're a card-carrying communist or you're a socialist. So in 50 years or so, they entirely erased the Indian scholar, the scholar of Bharatiya civilization, the Sanskritam scholar. He was sidelined entirely over here. So in 50 years, everything is gone through NCRT books, through narratives, government narratives. This is what you're seeing. It is because of this that you're seeing all these toxic narratives over there, because of the political maneuvering that these, I don't know what to call them, these people have done. So early corruption started over 300 years, starting with colonial scholars, missionary, Eurocentric scholars. I call it the colonial hegemony, imperialistic model. The Portuguese, Dutch, French, British, all of them encountered India, and they presented India in a certain way to suit their purposes. Along with Christian imperialism, the missionary model with people like Caldwell, Pope, and others, they brought about the idea that Hinduism is after Noah's flood. They brought about the idea that Hinduism is caste-ridden, Dravidians are oppressed people, Brahminical Aryans are evil people. Then, along with Eurocentric scholars with linguistics, anthropology, caste, they came about with certain other ideas. All of them had convergent ideologies. Their ideologies was by destroying Hindu faith, they'll accomplish their goals. That was a convergent goal over here. And you will think that today we are all enlightened people. We don't believe in this nonsense. But this is the received wisdom for our academia. Whatever nonsense they have said, they unquestioningly take it on themselves. And we see this socialist Marxist model that has taken whatever the colonial people have done, along with tools like archaeology, and today tools with genetics and such things, with circular dependencies and questionable assumptions, they directly impact the Bharatiya identity, who you are, what kind of person you are, how your ideology is. So this is a background to you to tell you why things have been so corrupted on us. And this little simple graphic shows you this. We have over here the colonial framework, Eurocentric, missionary, socialist academia, Marxist. The first three, the overarching idea is Christianity is the only true religion, superiority of the white European. They are superior to the natives and so on. So they came about the ideas to uphold the Bible's chronology, because the Bible told them that God created the world in 4004 BCE. By looking at the Old Testament, a bishop in 1700s, he proclaimed God created the world in 4004 BC. God destroyed the world in Noah's flood in 2500 BC. After that, all of humanity is because of Noah's son, Japheth, Shem, and Ham. It is through them that all of us belong. So to them, any history cannot be beyond this Bible's history. In India, they encountered Puranic history with tremendous chronology, and they couldn't take it. So they said all of Indian history is nonsense, rotten, wrong. So they took it on themselves to correct the chronology. That's why I uphold the Bible chronology to show Hindus as primitive, backward, stagnant, superstitious, discriminatory, superiority of white Europeans. So they shared these ideas. Also, the missionaries to promote Christianity. Socialist academia and Marxist, again showing Hindus as primitive, backward, what we call subaltern studies, history from below. They believed that everybody's voice matters, and they amplified these voices. So they called some people as Dalits, some people as untouchable, and their voices is important. And they conflated that on the entire civilization, going back for all time. That is what is the history from below. The Marxists and socialists brought about the oppressor-oppressed drishti. This in line with their philosophy that all history is a history of class conflicts. Gone is your Vedanta. Gone is your Mahavakyas. Nothing matters. All that matters is this person's ancestor oppressed that person's ancestor oppressed that person. He's a victim, he's an oppressor. That's all matters to history. That's how they have seen our history. And they soften Islam's impact. And they show class conflicts. They claim victimhood. Today with Islamism and wokeism, we're seeing that. And there's a deracinated framework in Tamil Nadu with Dravidianism today. They have mapped all these wrong ideas to themselves, and they believe that they are Dravidians, separate of the Aryans. They believe they've been oppressed people, and they believe the reason for their oppression is the Aryan. And so they're in a perpetual state of conflict till the present day, including the present election that took place. We saw the impact of these narratives taking place. So these are all the frameworks and their motivations for controlling identity, and we suffer from that. Why do we care about that? In the later talks, I'm going to talk more about this. I'm looking at the time also. So there is a false narrative that Aryans came from Central Asia in 1500 BC to India. These people were illiterate nomads. They didn't have a script, therefore they were uncivilized. They had an oral tradition. That's why they were illiterate people. They were running around India with caste, cow, and all this nonsense. And they believed that after India made contact with the Greeks in Magadha, after Alexandrian times, they made contact in Magadha, suddenly we got Brahmi script. Suddenly we got Ashokan pillar. Suddenly we became civilized. So this is what they say. And then they turn around and say, your civilization is a young civilization. You have not had enough gestation time to build up knowledge. So if you have superior knowledge like Shushruta Samhita, like Aryabhatiya, and like Surya Siddhanta, they say you must have copied it from the earlier civilizations, Babylonians, Greeks, and so on. So you see, adhikara is taken away from you. They take away the accomplishments of your ancestors and say they were a bunch of copycats who copied from the Greeks and Babylons. So this is the horrendous impact of Aryan invasion. People who ask, why do you care about Aryan invasion or migration? This is the reason, because it has taken away adhikara about the true civilization. We are all Hindus. We believe that the goal in life is to dispel avidya about our existence. Avidya is a big word that can include also the dishonesty of narrators. We are after the truth. What is the truth of our narratives? That's what we're doing over here. So they tell us Aryans brought Sanskrit into India from Central Asia. They say Brahmi came from the Levant, from the Aramaic script called Aramaic. Astronomy came from Babylonians. Greeks taught us math and sciences. Turkic Muslims, they got us culture, cuisine, architecture, music, civilization. British got us science, technology, rational thought. So this is the narrative out there, whether you like it or not. This is what your children are learning. Where is the truth? In these 4 lectures, I'll give you a very quick glimpse about where the reality is. So I, as a scientist, work on the scientific narrative over here. We need rational, logical analysis of data, models, methods, framework, claims. And I say there's so much data for history in India. You lift a stone, there is data over there. That's the way an experienced person can see. You got data from archaeology, genetics, climate, epigraphy, literature, from paleontology, religion, foreign traveler accounts. Wherever you look, there is something that has got a bearing on the Bharatiya civilization. And we can talk about it. I take these things in linguistics model, archaeology model, genetics, astronomy, in several models. And as a scientist, I ask first, where did your data come from? Is your data correct? What is the provenance of your data? Is it high quality data, medium quality data, low quality data? From that data, I say, what is the model you used? What assumptions did you put in your linguistics model? What assumptions did you put in your archaeology model? Then we test those assumptions. Are those assumptions right when it comes to Bharatiya civilization? Then we see the methodology. You use this data with your model, some method. We question the method. Then you make some claims that Aryans came from Central Asia. So we question those claims. Do those claims follow from your methodology? So we go in a systematic way. In these 4 lectures, you'll see as a scientist, I go very systematically in talking about these things. So I'd like to very quickly now jump to a very important distortion that has been thrust upon you, your children, pervasively. We are all deracinated and believe this nonsense. We all believe that we had something called caste system. And we believe that we are all castists and we are all inhumane people and such things. So we want to see whenever the word caste is used, they use these obligatory adjectives, inhumane, caste, immobile, hierarchy, discrimination. They must go together because they are controlling your mind you, right? They're controlling your mind. So they have to put those words to make a picture in your mind of who you are. So these words, wherever you see caste, I'll guarantee to you, one or all of these words will be used along with them. So we, as a scientist, like to see who introduced these words, how, when, and why. So very, very quickly, where does it originate from? They started with the Purusha Suktam. All of us know about the Purusha Suktam in the Rig Veda, right? It talks about creation, about cosmology. In talking about cosmology, it also brings in a metaphor of society, organization of a society. It talks about how you have when the Purusha, how many portions? Brahman is his mouth, and the Rajanya made his arms, thighs became the Vaishya, Shudra the feet. This caused a great controversy. The feet were seen as 30, that, this, and Shudra is there, and that, and this, and a pyramid came about, and hierarchy, and all these kind of things. But then I asked this question. If I use the word division, Semantics are powerful, words are powerful, as opposed to organization. Do you see the difference? I can say our society is divided into four castes, or I can say our society is organized into four groups. You see, there's a world of difference in the words that we use, and they prefer to use words that control your mind in division, showing some kind of antagonistic approach over here. So anyway, there's several controversies that come out of that. India, we only had Jati, Varna, Kulam, Gotra. Jati, Varna, Kulam, Gotra. Even today I say, I don't know what caste is. I cannot have a discussion on the basis of caste because it's an alien entity. I know what Jati, Varna, Kulam, Gotra is. We can have a discussion on that, but not on caste. Caste is a European creation, and I'll show you that over here. So the European construction of caste, the classical Jati Varna system is perverted into alien, immobile, hierarchical caste system, and we know it came from Portuguese word called casta. All the accusations of oppression, discrimination, upper, lower, untouchable, everything comes from this framework that the British have introduced for us. And the roots go to Aryan invasion using linguistics. We had an honorific. If somebody was a gentleman, we called him an Arya. For example, in the Mahabharata, Dushasana is called an Anarya because what he did to Draupadi, right? He tried to disrobe her in public. So he's called an Anarya. So it's an honorific that we use Arya, but it was perverted into a racial category. The English word Aryan is a perversion of the honorific that we call Arya. So they made that into a racial category. Similarly, Dravida was used by Adi Shankara, for example, saying, I am a Dravida Shishyu. He says that in Saundarya Lahiri. He says that, right? And we see this word used by others identifying a geographical region. But this was perverted by Caldwell into a racial category called Dravidian. The English word Dravidian originated by these people. If we know this, we are empowered. Our children are empowered if we know these kind of things. So caste was positioned as a racial construct of somebody called Aryans. We don't know who these Aryans are, but these Aryans are supposedly a racial construct of them. And Brahmins became evil in the missionary literature. And so how did casta become caste? Casta was used by the Portuguese because of their experience in the New World, right? So those people, they believe in the Hamitic tradition. In other words, they believed that Noah, his sons are Japheth, Ham, and Shem. Japheth was the father of the white people. Shem was the father of the Semitic people. Ham was the father of all the colored people. This is their belief, Bible's belief. And they believed that Ham was cursed by his father because he saw him in a drunken state, and so he cursed him. And he said, you must serve your other brothers. So Ham's descendants, they became slaves, literally. This is the justification for Bible slavery. For the last 2,000 years, they used this as a justification for slavery. Now, when they went to the New World, they saw that the Europeans, the Spanish people, Portuguese people, were mixing with the natives over there. Then the African slaves they brought along, they were also mixing with them. They didn't know what are these colored races, right? As far as the Bible's theory is concerned, it's all mixed over here. So for the bloodline purity of Bible's ideas, they brought about this notion of casta, and that casta was used in India to be perverted as caste. So this is the origin of this word. If we know this, we reject it. Where did this hierarchy come from? They say that we are hierarchical people, right? Brahmins at the top, Shudras at the bottom. Where on earth did that nonsense come from? Is it there in any text? Any Indian text you take, does it talk about hierarchy? It does not. The reality and the proof shows the British, they use the acharam and saucha practices. They looked at the various communities. They were anthropologists. They looked at the various communities in Tamil Nadu and Bengal and places like that. They saw how many ritual purity practices this community have. They have a lot of practices, we'll put them at the top. Some other community has got lesser purity practices, we'll put them at the bottom. Things like, for example, the length of period of pollution after birth and death, the degree to which food and water touched by various, accepted by others, where occupation, and so on and so forth. So by using these kind of criteria by the British record, they constructed a hierarchy. We never had hierarchy. We never said Brahmins at the top and Shudras at the bottom. Want the evidence? Please go and search for Vajra Suchi Upanishad, attributed to Adi Shankara. Some dispute that, doesn't matter. At some early period of time, Indians believed in thinking like that. In Vajra Suchi Upanishad, the question is, somebody asks, are Brahmins at the top? Are they chief among the different varnas? And Adi Shankara is answering that. He's saying, is it because of the color? He's saying, no. Is it because of the body? He says, no, deha, everybody has got the same deha. All varnas same deha. Is it the mind? He says, no, everybody's got the same mind. Is it because they practice dharma? He says, everybody practices dharma. Is it because of the knowledge he has? No, he's saying Kshatriyas and Vaishyas have got great knowledge. So he's finally saying what a Brahmana should be. And that is why he is considered as something important in society. There is no hierarchy. Bottom line, no hierarchy. That is what we learned. Hierarchy was manufactured by the British, and there's ample evidence for that. Yes, this is Vajrasuchi Upanishad I just talked about, doctrine of the diamond needle. Not the jiva, not the body, not the birth, not the knowledge, not the karma, not the dharma. There is no hierarchy, no privilege. It's a philosophical discussion of what a Brahmana is. So this is what we find repeatedly in the dharmic literature. You don't find hierarchy, you don't find discrimination. These are all inventions by people who want to control your mind. And they've done that very, very successfully. Now, the fake factoid about immobility, they tell us that we are rigid caste system. We cannot move about and things of this nonsense. But the reality shows otherwise. Look at Aryabhatta. Aryabhatta, some people spell him with two T's, Bhatta. But then the reality is there's one T. If you look at the preface of Aryabhatta by William Clark, he's a professor in Sanskrit in Harvard, 1930. He says why Aryabhatta should be spelled with one T and not two T's. And he proceeds to say, if he was a Bhatta, that means he's a Brahmin. He had access to Jyotisha wisdom. No surprise over there. But Bhatta with one T implies he was a servant. He was a servant of the people. That servant class person had the access to the highest wisdom. Jyotisha is seen as a crown jewel of all the Vedangas, and he's seen with access to that. One example, Peshwas. Peshwas, they were Brahmins, Maratha people, but they adopted the acharam practices of the Kshatriyas. They adopted that and they became Kshatriyas, going about and finishing off the Muslims where they saw them. Then you go to the Saurashtra weavers. Saurashtra's in Gujarat, right? The weavers used to come in Chola time from there to Tamil Nadu and sell their saris, cloth and whatnot, and all these kind of things. In Tamil Nadu, in the Chola times, they adopted the acharam and saucha practices of Brahmins. Today, they're called Saurashtra Brahmins in Kumbakonam, in Tanjavur, and places like that. So nobody said, you can't be a Brahmin, you can't be a Kshatriya. Nobody's there policing these people. You just adopt the acharam and saucha practice of the community or varna you want to belong to. In 7 generations, you'll become that. So if anybody wishes to join a varna, you simply adopt those practices. Where did this Brahmins equal to evil come from? This came from a luminary, literally, somebody called Abbé Dubois. He was a priest who escaped the French Revolution. If he was in France, his head would have been cut off in the guillotine. But he hopped on a boat and a ship and he came to Pondicherry. In Pondicherry, he started his nonsense. He found he could not convert anybody because everybody would go to the Brahmin and ask for advice, and Brahmin would say, don't do that. So he found Brahmins are impediment to conversion. So in this book, he's talking about how a Brahmin is considered as a moral monster. Education of Brahmin is universal hatred and contempt. These are the kind of things he wrote about Brahmins. He set the stage for everybody else after him to address Brahmins as evil. So the evil Brahmin came from Christianity's inability to convert the Hindu in Tamil Nadu and other such places. That is the origin of this one. Then there are Eurocentric people like Herbert Risley, who was a census commissioner in India, right, in 1900s. They did failed anthropological things like measuring the height of the nose, the width of the nose, taking that ratio and saying that your race can be determined by craniometrics, by nose metrics and things like that. These are all failed ideas, by the way. He saw so many colors, races in India. See that map? Each color is a race. He saw so many races in India based on the nose metrics. and further, he also entrenched the notion of Aryans as a race. And as census commissioner, he forced the people to declare what he called as caste. Nobody knew what caste is. Even the Muslims said that caste. Even the Christians said that caste. Nobody knew what that caste business is. But then he entrenched that. He created 2,378 castes, tribes, and subcaste. And here is the mischief over here. He ordered them by social preference. Nothing in India talks about hierarchy, but he did it. Social preference. And he institutionalized this notion of a caste. So the origin of immobility is really the rigidity of British officialdom. They are the ones in census, they forced people to declare what their caste is. So all the perversions we are seeing today originate basically over here. What about untouchability? This is outside the Varna system, right? So we see this is the phenomenon that is there throughout the world. Because in the medieval world, we didn't have flush toilets. We didn't have people to deal with this. So when cities grow big, how do you deal with the waste? So in every society, there have been people who dealt with the waste. And you see that in China, Europe, France, India, Japan, Korea, Nigeria, Somalia, Tibet, Yemen. Only in India, you'll find it singled out. You'll find it singled out for this business of untouchability and so on. So summary of European construction of caste. Accusations that are obligatorily hurled at Hindus like oppression and discrimination. I'm going to show the falsity of that in the next few slides. Immobility, I showed this is false. Indian history has enough instances of people going across the varnas. There's no upper, lower. Wherever people want to go, adopt that acharam and you go there. Hierarchy, we show there's no such thing as hierarchy. The British constructed that by ordering the acharam practices. We saw that. Untouchable is a worldwide phenomenon. Brahmins is evil. We saw missionary manufactured this hatred. So what about oppression and discrimination? So we have seen that this classical Jati, Varna, Kulam, Gotra has been perverted by them. So we need to do a 360-degree investigation. I say as a scientist, take the top-down view. What does the civilization say about oppression, about all of this nonsense? Then we see a bottom-up, the practitioner, because the fellow who's experiencing it has got a different viewpoint. One is aspirational, the other one is experienced. So let us take his viewpoint also. And typically we need a historical view to bridge the two because the views can be wrong, right? We have to bridge the two. So we do that, top-down view. We see in Bhagavad Gita itself, which says varnas are determined by your gunas, right? It is your gunas that determine what your varna. We see that. We have Mahavakyas, right? Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, and Prajnanam Brahma, and so on. So these are all saying the oneness of creation, the oneness of Brahman. Can such a civilization that sees such noble ideals be so hypocritical and paradoxical to practice untouchability, oppression, and so on? This is the question you must ask. Were our ancestors so shallow that although they had philosophy like this, they practiced this? So the top-down model is aspirational, and we have already seen rules of achara. What about the bottom-up? The bottom-up has become a conflict-based model. It uses colonial received wisdom of immobile, hierarchical caste, evil Brahmins. It refuses to acknowledge mobility or the philosophical base of Vedanta. In practice, we're seeing British ethnocide that created poverty, destroyed livelihoods. That is what introduced many resource problems in India. The impoverishment of India caused many resource problems. The collapse of the Jati Varna system, that caused people to seek refuge in their own communities. And because of this shamanism, we are seeing sometimes resource conflicts, maybe in Bihar, maybe in places like that. This has been falsely portrayed as a kind of a problem on the Indian civilization, on Hinduism, and so on. We have to be very careful in taking the history to validate these things. So the Marxist, socialist, leftist nexus upholds this model with many, many works. I'm going to give you a diametrically different view of this whole thing using public health awareness in the ancient past. I want to talk to you about Yoga Vashishta. How many know about Yoga Vashishta here? Several of you know, outstanding. In Yoga Vashishta, we have Vishwamitra and Vashishta advising the young Lakshmana and Rama, the teenage, on life and so on and so forth. In that, there's the story of Karkati. Karkati is a monster. She has got an insatiable appetite. She wants to consume human beings all the time. She eats, and so on and so forth. One fine day, she's so ashamed of her gluttony, she goes and prays to Brahma for a boon. Brahma comes, what do you want? She says, I want to become tiny. So tiny like a suchi, like a needlehead. I want to become so tiny. I want to enter humans through their nostrils and go and affect their heart. And she wants to affect only people who are living in unhygienic places, who don't follow the Dharma Shastras, who are given to drinking, who are given to gluttony. These are the people she wants to affect. Even a completely knowledgeless person will say it is encoding germ theory, right? It is so obvious to us that that's what it is. So we are seeing that it's showing ancient encoding of prudent diet, hygiene, good mental and physical health. This is the moral in the story. It is not at all surprising because our rishis would have seen every year in India. India is a tropical country. Whenever monsoons come, waterborne diseases will be there. cholera, dysentery, malaria, TB. They have been there for ages and ages and ages. They have been there. So our rishis would have seen entire villages getting wiped out. Do you think that they kept quiet? They were scientists. No, they have speculated in all these things. They know invisible things are causing these kind of problems. There is full health awareness. There's also awareness that you must be healthy, you must live healthy, hygienic. All that is what is encoded in these stories. That is what we're seeing over here. And if you take even more recent kind of evidence, you go to the British records. This is a British book from 1767. It is talking about inoculation performed in Hindustan by a tribe of Brahmins. He's saying that they divide themselves into small parties before the onset of the disease, which means before the monsoon comes. There are Brahmins who are planning in West Bengal, in Bengal and in Tamil Nadu and places like that, about how to go to various villages and inoculate people. That is what he's talking about. It's an eyewitness account. This is then another paper, 1819 Asiatic Journal. This man is saying, Vaidya Shastras, from Dhanvantari's work, he's saying there are 9 species of smallpox. 3 of them are not curable, and the author lays down the rules for the practice of inoculation. This is in the British records talking about Vaidyas in India practicing inoculation. And going further, he's talking about this translation, how you take the pox from the udder of a cow using a lancet, you mix it with the blood, and you form the fever of the smallpox over there. Then he goes to the villages, they ask, have you followed this diet? 30 days you must follow a diet. So the Brahmins go household to household, ask, have you followed the diet? If you follow the diet, they'll give you the inoculation. And after some time, he's saying the disease will be gone, and so on. This man has written this, and variolation, inoculation, both are over here. Another paper, 1827, this is in Odisha now. In Odisha, is saying on a certain day, 200 people have lined up over there and they're all getting this inoculation. What is it telling us? It is telling us that India had knowledge of diseases, disease-carrying agents. It also had knowledge of epidemics. It also knew community health is very important. That's why we have to practice inoculation for everybody. It had awareness of all these things. We also know after the British digested all this knowledge through Edward Jenner and other such people, they forbid the practice of in India. In 1865, they banned Indian inoculation. If you ask today, why is it we don't see any such thing today in India? Because for the last 150 years or so, this practice has been banned and it is lost in India. Actually, somebody told me when I went to a conference, he told me in Andhra Pradesh, even today, not for humans, but for animals. For animals, they follow the same inoculation methods. They take the disease from a cow that was had that problem, they keep it for some time, and from that they inject it to other cows, and they immunize the cows. So that practice is there in some places, at least in India, even today. So what are the observations? It is saying Brahmins are conducting the inoculation. Does that fit the conflict model of oppression? It does not fit that. We have a problem over there. Dharampal, I didn't talk to you about Dharampal, but he's saying Brahmins taught students of all the jatis, not just Brahmins. The British records that Dharampal used is saying that he taught of all, that's not fitted. Vedanta view of Varna, the Mahavakyas, that does not fit the conflict model. Personalities like Valmiki, Vyasa, Aryabhatta, Saurashtra Brahmins, Peshwas are showing mobility across the spectrum. That also does not fit the conflict model. Acharam and Saucha practices that define mobility, that also does not fit the conflict model. Where did the conflict model come from? Why is that imposed on us? This is the dominant way we see ourselves. You talk about caste, you say, oh, we are a caste-ridden society. Is that the practice of your family, of your ancestors' families? No, none of our experience we see this kind of antagonism between people and so on. If at all, there is only a resource crunch and those kind of, or arrogance of the rich versus the poor. You don't see any other kind of things over here. Shrishata Samhita, the evidence now, I'm taking you all the way back to Shrishata Samhita. Even he's talking about epidemics. The Rishi Shrishata is talking about epidemics. He's talking about how there's an epidemic in a village, leave that place, don't drink water there, don't eat vegetables there, go away to a safe place. So you're seeing all, he's also saying that it's caused by a monster. That monster, a demoness, as Karkati, is basically talking about that over here. So cultural practices. In Northern India, you have a certain festival called Basoda. Even today, you practice that, right? It is the last day in winter that you can eat yesterday's food. You should no longer eat, because in India, there's no refrigeration. In summer months, it's very, very hot. Morning's food is spoiled by evening. So there's an understanding of bacteria, understanding of health, all that is encoded in our cultural practices in addition. And people say that Vastu, typically in medieval India, the kings would invite the Brahmins to settle in their kingdoms, just like today's software economic zones or export-oriented zones. Some zone which the city sets up with zero taxes for economic growth. Kings used to vie between themselves for the few Brahmins, asking them to come and settle in their kingdoms. They'll give them gold. They'll tell them that these villages are yours. You can use the revenue. As soon as the Brahmins come, they'll do Vastu Shastra. They'll say that potter live here, carpenter live here, Brahmins live here, Kshatriyas live here. And the Marxists immediately say oppression and discrimination. But then I'm showing that there's a deep understanding of occupational biohazard. If you take the weaver is not like today's factory. Today's modern factories have got air conditioning and all those kind of things. In the old days, it'll be a small hut where it'll have a loom, manual loom. He's breathing cotton fibers morning till evening, and he'll have respiratory issues, pneumonia or TB and other such things. He gets immunity, his wife has immunity, his children have immunity, community has got immunity. Others don't have that immunity. If you're an ironsmith, same thing, you're breathing vapor fumes all day long, you've got issues. If you're a butcher, you're exposed to E. coli, others have that problem, but you don't. Similarly, if you're a farmer, we understood each occupation as a biohazard, and therefore you needed to separate people out for community health. That is what we're seeing over here. And I asked the question, common sense question, can an oppressive society be prosperous? This is evidence from a different area entirely, Angus Madison, who's talking about the historical economies of the world, and is showing that India was one of the most prosperous countries 2,000 years ago, and coming down at a slope of 10% over 1,000 years. At British time, you can see the slope went down very, very rapidly with the impoverishment. I asked the question, can a society that is discriminatory, oppressive, can it be this kind of thing? It is not. The Brahmins don't have a skill. They are not the guys going and making all the cloth to sell on Silk Road or Indo-Roman trade. They're not doing that. It is the artisans of the so-called Shudras. They are the ones who are doing all the items of value for trade. So India cannot have been that prosperous if it was a discriminatory society. That is the bottom line. So my model of public health, the classic Vastu Shastra, that is reflecting knowledge of public health. In this entire list of occupations that I gave, who is the person who has the least immunity? It is the Brahmana. The Brahmana is rising up in the morning, he has a ritual bath, and he does Gayatri Japa mantra, and he does homas and other such things morning till night. He's eating very simple foods and things like that. He is not doing physical labor. He's got the least immunity with zero physical labor. So therefore, the acharam practices, saucha practices are maximum on the Brahmana. Maximum. They say if you touch somebody from this community, you have 2 baths. If you touch somebody from that community, have 1 bath. The Dharma Shastras are saying this, immediately seen as discriminatory. But now I request you, my dear audience, please wear the drishti of public health and see immediately how everything that you've been told is discrimination can be reconciled happily and very nicely in the public health model. It's an understanding of public health that have all these practices that you see in the Bharatiya civilization. That's what I'm talking about. I gave you evidence on Yoga Vashishta. I didn't talk to you about Ayurveda and immunity, colonial records, prosperous society. So the model of public health, the driver of Saucha practice, is a far better evidence-based fit rather than conflict model of oppression and discrimination, which is got from discredited racial theories. If you and your children can articulate this, we are on our road to reclaiming our identity. We can immediately say that. I request you to take every practice you have been told is discriminatory. Try to see it with this drishti of public health. You will see that it makes sense. You'll see everything makes sense in this particular one. So, Jati, Varna, Kulam, Gotra is perverted to rigid caste. A mobile system is falsely represented as immobile. Upper, lower hierarchy is manufactured by colonial people. Evil Brahmin hatred is institutionalized by missionaries. Public health distancing is positioned as discriminatory. We all know when COVID was there, somebody sneezes, we'll run for our life, right? So we have seen that. So we can see this. Isolation of people with hazardous occupations positioned as discriminatory or oppressive. Now, the people who carried the night soil, they serviced all the varnas. They were exposed to the germs of every varna. They had the maximum immunity, but others did not have that. That is why they were requested to live far away from the settlements. Whether in India or in Europe or elsewhere, this has been the practice everywhere, that you stay away from the rest. That's why you go in villages, you'll find a separate glass for them, separate plate for them, separate this one for them. You can see it as conflict model or see it in public health model. You'll suddenly see a different view coming out of the whole thing. So the oppressor-oppressed victimhood is basically from socialist, leftist, Marxist ideological narratives. Bottom line, we should reject any discussion on caste as irrelevant, malicious. It's a false imposition on Hindus. We should only discuss, tell me about Jati, Varna, Kulam, Gotra. I'll talk to you about it. Talk about caste, you go and talk to whoever made that caste. We don't know what caste is. So very quickly finishing, I don't think I have much time. I had much more to tell. I'll just flip through the slides and I'll stop over there. So our children are also attacked in school by saying you worship monkeys and elephants and things of this nature. So there's a divinity distortion. So this is what they say, right? You worship elephants and monkeys. We can see from Yajnavalkya himself. Yajnavalkya is challenged by the Rishini called Maitri. She challenges him. How many, sorry, it's not Rishini, it's another person, Sakala. He's asking, how many gods are there in Yajnavalkya? Yajnavalkya says 3,333. Again, he asks, how many gods are there? Then he says there are 333, then 6, then 3, then 2, then finally says 1.5. Then he finally says there's one God. Yajnavalkya says that. Philosophically, he's saying that one God is Brahman. All of us are part of the cosmos, Advaita. All of us part of that cosmos, and we are all in this framework. This is what we see, the notion of oneness of Nirguna Brahman, the formless Brahman we are seeing coming out of Yajnavalkya's commentary over here. So Bhagavan in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Vishwarupam, he's saying you can see everything in me. When he gives a divine eye to Arjuna, he's saying you can see everything in me. Again, it's an expression that everything that you see in the cosmos is me alone. That is what the oneness is coming out of this again. But here, this Saguna Brahman, Brahman with a form, we are seeing that coming in over here, and we are seeing that. We all have the concept of Ishta Devata. Ishta Devatas are aspirational figures, what we aspire to be. There are properties in a devata that we aspire to see in ourselves. As we rise our consciousness towards divinity, that's what we see. As a scholar, I worship Saraswati, right? Because I want that knowledge. Saraswati is renowned for her knowledge. As a wrestler, I'm going to worship Hanuman in my studio, right? I lift the weights every day and I worship Hanuman. If I'm a dancer, it is Nataraja. Similarly, like this, we have got aspirational deities. If you're a physician, Dhanvantari, farmers, Bhumi Devi, Varuna, scholars, Saraswati, business people, Lakshmi. So there are some attributes of divinities that we want. So these are the attributes that we map and we worship. It does not mean an end to itself, but because entire Vedanta comes towards oneness over here. So like I said, it's an aspirational goal on the means to Brahman. So what is the destination? So whether you're in temples or doing puja or whatever, we have several equivalent parts, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Gnana Yoga. These are all discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, right? So we are seeing that these are all equivalent paths. One path is not superior to the other. This is what we're seeing. So basically, each one is on an individual journey based upon our karma phala, on our understanding of Vedanta, our understanding of cosmos. We are going to proceed on a path to spirituality. This is what we're going to do. That is what Indian context says entirely. So people who mock our children with worshipping monkeys and elephants, this is something we've got to tell them. Finally, they say Hindus are superstitious and backward, right? So they say your Purana stories are silly. Your beliefs are all superstitious. Our children are attacked on that. So over here, I've got so many talks that talk about it. I'm not going to say. These talk about how Puranas contain metaphoric wisdom. If you have the key to unlock that wisdom, suddenly the wisdom becomes clear. If you don't have the key to unlock wisdom, it remains a silly mythology. So people who come saying it's a silly mythology are at a pedestrian level of understanding. They have not understood the Vedanta. They have not understood the metaphor. They have not made an effort, perhaps, to understand that. So that is what it is. The epistemology of India shows we got well-developed darshanas. whether it's Nyaya, Yoga, Vaisheshika, Samkhya, Purvamimamsa, Vedanta, we have got well-developed ways of looking at the world. Darshana is a way of looking at the world, a way of looking at it. For example, Nyaya says all knowledge is not intrinsically valid. Most knowledge is not valid till proven. Truth exists whether we human beings know it or not. Rishi Akshapada Gautama, he said these kind of things. So profound statements, valid even today. And Vaisheshika, Rishi Kannada, perception and inference. This is the basis of our scientific world. We look at data, perception, and then through our earlier understandings, we make inferences and construct new truths. This is what we do. So similarly, Samkhya, systematic enumeration, the 24 tattvas that we have, is an enumeration of Prakriti, of the material world, and so on. We're seeing that Rishi Kapila and so on. I'll skip this, not much time. So pramanas are our authority to accept knowledge as valid or invalid. If I come and tell you some statement like the sun rises in the west, it's a truth claim, right? It's a truth claim. Then you can use physics and say nonsense. Physics, I know the model of the solar system. I know Earth is rotating like this, therefore it's always got to be east. Or if I say the moon split into two by the power of some prophet, you can say, come on, that does not happen. If that happened, there'll be so many other issues. Physics helps us to understand that. So pramanas are the means by which we accept authority for a knowledge. If I'm a PhD guy writing my thesis, I go to the library, take the IEEE journal and say, some professor from MIT publishes theorem. I'm going to write my theorem after that. What am I doing? I'm saying the adhikara for my work is that professor. He's a Nobel Prize winner from MIT, and based on his reputation, I'm doing my work. That is what I'm clinging on to his coattails, right? So in India, these are all the pramanas: pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, postulation, negative proof, shabda pramana, all these things. Different darshanas, Samkhya, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, only differed from what was permitted, what is not permitted as a valid means for knowledge. Charvakas, they said only perception. They rejected the Vedas, rejected everything. Only perception matters, nothing else. If you go to Buddhism, just like Vaisheshika, perception and inference alone, nothing else matters. Jainism, similarly, small differences were there in dharmic systems, philosophical differences, not huge ones. Why am I saying all these things? Because our children should be able to articulate one main point. Ask anybody who attacks your way of life, what is the goal of life? What is the goal of life in your way of life, whether you're an Abrahamic person or a Hindu? The goal of life for Hindus, one line, dispel avidya. I need to dispel avidya about my existence to gain vidya, right? That is the goal. So the ignorance, and to gain knowledge across lifetime, because this knowledge, our belief is that the knowledge of Brahma Vidya is not going to come in one lifetime. It's based on your karma phala. Your karma may not be that good. So in your next janma, maybe you'll be closer to a spiritual goal. And so across lifetimes, your Atman is coming closer and closer to Brahma Vidya. This is our belief. So we follow the different darshanas and the different pramanas based on the sampradaya we are born into, and we acquire this knowledge. And so we are called seekers because we seek knowledge. In archaic knowledge, thou shalt seek. If you're an Abrahamic person, a Christian, a Jew, or a Muslim, for them, their belief system, their goal in life is to follow a divine dictated law. Somebody dictated the law. Archangel Gabriel gave it to some prophet in a cave, or maybe Christ came and said the only way to the Father is through the Son, and things of this nature. And so the goal in life for them is to only follow the divine dictated law. That's why the metaphor of a shepherd and sheep. Christ is the shepherd and you're the sheep. Blindly follow. Wait, just have faith and follow, don't. So there is no knowledge, there's no questioning, no seeking or anything. You're a follower. That is the difference between them. Why do you follow them? Because the belief that in the afterlife you'll be admitted to heaven or to eternal damnation in hell. You'll burn forever and ever in hell if you don't follow the divine dictated law. That fear keeps them in line and makes them good Christians or good Muslims and so on and so forth. So, and for them, if you question, it is blasphemy. You should not question, you should believe. Blasphemy will cut your throat off, or excommunication and so on. In the Hindu faith, we question everything. Upanishad is entirely question and answer. Shishya is asking the Guru questions, Guru is answering. If you're not questioning, you're not learning. So we question everything in our path to acquiring knowledge. That is the bottom line. If our children can articulate this difference, we are seekers of knowledge. You are followers. If you can articulate that, you are already on your way to reclaiming your identity. You can clearly say that is a belief system with unverifiable truth claims. Whereas this is a scientific way where I question everything. I question everything and I acquire knowledge. If you can articulate this, your children and you are on the way to acquiring your identity. Examples are there all over the place. Yajnavalkya, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, going all the way back to 3000 BC. Ashatoma Satkamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirkamaya, Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya. He's saying from darkness, from ignorance lead me to truth, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. This is a civilization that exalted seeking of truth as the goal of life for thousands and thousands of years. This is who we are. Don't let them dictate who you are. Your identity is under attack. Don't believe that. Kill off the deracination that you have and try to acquire this knowledge, and you try to see who we are. Okay, so I will skip. So you should be able to articulate the difference between seekers and followers. Seekers are people of the library. Followers are people of the book. They have one book, Quran or the Bible or so on. We have a library, entire library of all the books, Upanishads, whatever we have. So let our children be able to articulate this difference between followers and seekers. So we are seekers of truth. Our goal in life is to dispel avidya. It may happen in this lifetime, it may happen across lifetimes, but that is our goal. In doing so, we follow dharmic practices. The guideposts are there in the Dharma Shastras. Dharma Shastras are not frozen in time. We can question Dharma Shastras also and make sure they're contemporized for our present understanding. We question everything. We follow Dharma, mindful of our karma. In today's world, I'll give you one mantra and I'll stop after this. In today's world, we should know that reducing your carbon footprint is equivalent to reducing your karmic footprint. Think about that for a minute. Everything we do in life today is generating carbon. We are affecting climate change. Species are getting destroyed by tremendous means over here. So everything we do, I can choose to drive a gas guzzler, or I can choose to drive a hybrid car. So I consciously become mindful of the practices that I'm doing and try to reduce the carbon footprint by the 3 R's, right? Reduce, recycle, reuse. Consciously, I do that so that I'm reducing my karmic footprint in the world. We as Hindus owe it to the world because there is no solution from Abrahamic systems. In Abrahamic systems, God put man as a steward of creation to do as he likes, to enjoy life as he likes. And so there's unbridled rape of the resources of the world. That is what is happening today. And that's led us to where we are today with climate change and so on. As Hindus, we have a duty in life to say in our dharmic systems, that is not the way. We got to see what is our role in life to make sure that we are stewards of the entire cosmos through the practices I talked about. Okay, with that, I think I will stop. Concluding remarks. The deep history taught in Indian schools is utterly wrong. Today emphasized, 5 agencies have enforced their ideologies and frameworks. They control the historiography of India: colonial, Eurocentric, missionary, socialist academia, Marxist, and today 2 more frameworks, wokeism and Islamism. They've also joined the framework, and they all have a common convergent ideology in destroying Hinduism. Let us understand that. And so their narratives should be scrutinized, and you should reject them with evidence. That's what we should do. And in the next lecture, I'm going to show you strong evidence to uphold the antiquity of the Indian civilization with some evidence also that shows that. Okay, with that, I thank you. Thank you so much. Bye. So, but last comment. All this is done under the auspices of Hindu University of America. You might see that in my title. So today we got Vijay Kane, my colleague over here. He's got some brochures from Hindu University of America. If you're interested, please contact.
Thank you, Dr. Vedam. Appreciate a very thought-provoking message, lecture. And everybody in Arya Samaj has heard us talk about Kirvanta Vishnu Aryam. Now you know the meaning of Aryam from his words also, noble, make the word noble. So that's where the Aryam comes from. We appreciate And like he said, he's a visiting faculty of Hindu University of America. You probably saw every slide copyright. He's also visiting faculty at Rishihood University in India. Also, Arsh Seva Kendram in Coimbatore. Arsh Seva Kendram, Coimbatore, an advisory council on Dharma Civilization Foundation of California.